About 3 minutes ago, while I was in the middle of filming another video, we got news that Prop 50 in California has passed. I'm just going to read a little bit here from Mother Jones. By the way, if you don't support them, excellent journalism right now. I appreciate their tagline, get your news from a source that's not owned and controlled by the oligarchs. Anyway, California voters on Tuesday overwhelmingly passed Prop 50 in a race called by the Associated Press before a single ballot was counted, a reflection of the decisive support in a victory that significantly boosts Democratic chances of retaking the House of Representatives next year. The ballot measure establishes a new congressional map through 2030 that could help Democrats win 5 additional seats, offsetting a mid-decade gerrymander passed by Texas Republicans over the summer. Now, real quick here, the important distinction between the gerrymandering in Texas and the gerrymandering of Prop 50 in California is that in Texas, they did it against the will of the people without the consent of the governed. Republicans did it because Donald Trump pressured Greg Abbott, who pressured the Texas Republicans. This was not something that originated from the people. This was not something that the people voted for or asked for. In California, it's quite different because the state was like, hey, we're going to make this a ballot measure. We're telling the people up front, this is what we're doing. We are gerrymandering the map through 2030. We're doing it to combat the illegal gerrymandering in Texas. Everybody understands that we're fighting fire with fire, right? We all understand that that's what we're doing. Are y'all cool with it? Voters, is this something that you want? Because you're elected officials, we're not going to do this without your consent. The governor isn't just going to sweep in and demand that the legislature do something. The legislature isn't going to do it without the consent of the people. That's the key difference. The people of California voted for this. This is a specific tactic to combat the authoritarian overreach of Donald Trump, the attempts to cheat by the Republicans. This is fighting fire with fire, and it is something that California voters said, yeah, we're fucking down with this. Let's go. Game on, motherfuckers. So this is real bad news for Texas because Texas tried to gerrymander 5 seats, including, I think, trying to get rid of Jasmine Crockett's seat. But we already know that gerrymandering to try and give Republicans an edge can actually have the effect of backfiring, because in an attempt to switch Democratic districts to go Republican, it means they have to take those established Democratic voters and dilute them, kind of spread them out into other solidly red Republican districts, and that makes them less solidly red. So it makes the potential for there to be flips in unexpected places. So yeah, gerrymandering in Texas likely will backfire. There are already organizers on the ground that are working to make sure that it does. Do you see the difference here? The millions of Texas voters, particularly black and brown voters, that Republicans are attempting to disenfranchise by their real shit job of gerrymandering an already very badly gerrymandered map. Those folks in Texas are going to organize to combat the gerrymandering there, versus in California, they want this gerrymandering. This is something that the people have asked for. And Mother Jones is right here. They say Prop 50 represents Democrats' first significant victory against President Donald Trump's unprecedented plan to rig the midterms by pressuring as many GOP-controlled states as possible to redraw their maps before the 2026 elections. The hastily assembled California plan, championed by Gavin Newsom, asked voters to temporarily set aside the congressional maps drawn for 4 years by the state's independent Redistricting Commission and approve new maps passed by the legislature that were designed to maximize Democratic representation. Now, understand that Democratic elected officials in many states, including California, have been pushing for nonpartisan election commissions. This is what they have in California, to draw up the maps so that there is no gerrymandering, right? We know that when people are allowed to have their voices heard at the ballot box, when we actually have everybody able to vote, when representative democracy works, then we know that the Democrats often win. So Democrats don't actually have any incentive to gerrymander. Republicans do, because every red state in this country is actually a gerrymandered purple state or straight up a gerrymandered blue state. Gerrymandering is a classic way to suppress the vote of especially Black voters in the South. It is a legacy of Jim Crow. It is a way to disenfranchise folks so that conservative white men in power can control state government. It's abhorrent. It is absolutely the antithesis of what a representative democracy should be about. elected officials who want a representative democracy should be advocating for nonpartisan election commissions to draw up congressional maps. But Republicans they're never going to go for that. So please understand that this concept of an independent commission to draw up the congressional maps, that's still really popular in California. What's happening here is that Democrats told voters in California, like, hey, y'all, we understand the utility of this situation, right? We understand that what we're doing here, according to Mother Jones, right, it's an urgent action needed to hold Trump accountable and restore fairness to the race for the House. And voters were like, okay, yep, we believe you. We're going to get on board with that. Let me read a little bit more here. Supporters of Prop 50 hope that the ballot measure's passage inspires other Democratic states to act. Even if California Democrats ultimately pick up 5 seats to counter Texas, Texas-controlled states including Missouri, North Carolina, and Ohio are working to redraw or have redrawn their maps to add additional GOP seats to the House. And with more red states like Indiana and Florida, they're waffling, right? Indiana's governor just was like, oh, I'm a pussy ass little bitch and I'm going to bend the knee and lick Donald Trump's boots, right? He's starting to cave to that pressure. Democratic Hoosiers, I'm sorry that y'all have to deal with the elected officials that you do have. So with all of this gerrymandering shit that Republicans are doing in these red states because Donald Trump is pressuring them and they're like, yes, Daddy Donald, we'll betray our own constituents. We'll betray our own states to do whatever you want. Yeah, we know we said we were the party of states' rights. We know we said we were the party of small government, but King Donnie will do whatever you want. Yeah, because of that, Democrats could ultimately end up 6 or 7 seats behind in the House unless we get our shit together and organize. So what happened in California, that has to be expanded to other states. States with Democratic governors, Democratic state houses, Democratic attorneys general need to be organizing. There needs to be more coordination, collaboration, and an effort to fight back against what the regime is doing. Now, Virginia Democrats are working to redraw their map similarly to California's, and it would ultimately need to be approved by the state's voters. But what we're finding is this triple flip here for the attorney general, the lieutenant governor, and the governor from Republican to Democrat. That very much seems to be lending support for this idea that Virginia should be doing the same thing that California is doing. It's definitely a condemnation of Trump and the Republicans when you have a Republican-controlled House and Senate and a Republican-controlled White House, and you have off-year elections and Democrats are fucking sweeping all of them. That's a resounding condemnation of those in power. Now, Kamala Harris told us that courage is catching, right? So this victory for Prop 50, that's going to embolden Democratic governors and state houses around the country to be like, oh, voters have an appetite for this. Oh, this is something that might be good for us politically and also good for our democracy. We have also seen Wes Moore, who is the Democratic governor for Maryland, I believe, announce that he is going to work on redistricting. There's building pressure for Illinois to redistrict. Here in Oregon, I'm not sure how that would work. We're not as populous as you might think. So we only have one Republican in Congress, Cliff Bentz, who's a diehard Trumper. I'm not sure how we could get him out because he represents very deeply red parts of the state. He really does a disservice to his constituents in Eastern and Southern Oregon. He supports Donald Trump gutting Medicaid and SNAP, and those parts of the state take a hugely disproportionate amount of those services. The hospitals in Oregon that are going to be closing as a result of what the Republicans are doing also in his district. So I would love to see Cliff Bentz ousted. If you are in Central and Southern Oregon and Eastern Oregon, how can you organize to get rid of Cliff Bentz? So yeah, courage is catching, right? This quote here, the folks who were on the sidelines who felt like redistricting would be too difficult or too unpopular to do may feel differently now that California voters have passed Prop 50. Courage is contagious. Keep in mind, this was with the Department of Justice attempting to intimidate voters by sending election monitors into the counties with large Latino populations. And I think, as with many repressive things that Trump does, authoritarian tactics that he engages in, it creates a backlash effect. So when he sends his people in to try and intimidate voters, it makes people more determined to get out and exercise their right to vote. Mother Jones says, if the Trump regime sought to deter voters from supporting Prop 50, it didn't work, with early voting turnout alone almost reaching presidential levels. So to the voters of California, thank you. Thank you for being willing to do this to help us all defend democracy. Really, really proud of y'all today.